Let me ask you this. If you're thinking of immigrating to Canada, have you ever considered Quebec? Because of some personal priorities, but I'm back again with my content and apologizes for missing out on sharing an update in the last couple of weeks. And with that, I'm here with a new interesting topic. It's all about Quebec, where it announced its immigration plan for 2025. And honestly, it's not your typical just bring in more people strategy. Well, it's about balancing jobs, culture, and their beloved French language. But the big question is this plan helping newcomers succeed, or is it creating more barriers on top of what's already existing? So stick with me because I'm breaking it all down for you with relatable examples and actionable insights that you can take forward. So Quebec is kind of like the cool cousin in the family of Canadian provinces. More or less for me, if I see them, they set the example for other provinces to follow. Consider the recent policy change that happened for the student permits where there has to be a provincial letter, a provincial attestation letter for the universities or the colleges to be issued by the provincial governments, and then you go with that to get your study permit. So that's already been there in Quebec, and Canadian government replicated that and passed it on to the other provinces to follow. So Quebec, in that way, it set themselves as an example. So in many ways, they are unique and have their own set of rules to be followed and pretty much controlled and regulated by their own provincial government. Like that way, it's pretty unique, a little rebellious, and unapologetically quite different from other provinces. And when it comes to immigration, Quebec does things its way, and thanks to its special agreement with the federal government, and that's the kind of liberty that they have to run things on their own. And if you see most of the policies or anything of that sort, be it insurance, it says except Quebec, because their regulations or their set of rules are quite different than other provinces. So some rule may be applicable in Alberta, may not necessarily be applicable in Quebec for that matter. And for 2025, Quebec has rolled out its immigration strategy, and here's the interesting part. It's not all about numbers. It's basically focusing on preserving its culture, prioritizing the French language, and carefully integrating the newcomers, which is an interesting part for sure for many of you. But what does that mean for people like you who might be dreaming of living in Canada, right? So in this video, we're going to cover some important things, and the first one is what's new in this entire 2025 immigration plan laid out by Quebec. We're going to cover that, and secondly, we're going to cover why Quebec's approach is different from the rest of Canada. We're emphasizing on the why part of it, and with that, we'll also talk about the opportunities and the challenges you should prepare for. I'll also try to link up with some examples to help you connect with the dots, and if you're ready, let's get into the video. The first part, let's talk about the numbers behind the plan, which is numbers are always an interesting discussion, right? So, and Quebec has set a target of welcoming between 52 to 56,000 immigrants in 2025. Now, if you're thinking that sounds pretty standard, but here's the interesting twist. Quebec is prioritizing quality over quantity. So let's get into that part of it, where it says 65% economic immigrants, and these are basically skilled workers and entrepreneurs. And the 25% of the immigration will happen through family reunification, means the spouses and children of permanent residents or citizens, and 10% refugees and other humanitarian cases. So they're trying to cover all aspects of it. And that sums up to about 100% of the overall plan that they have between 52 to 56,000. And now if you compare that to a province like Ontario, which is ramping up its immigration targets year after year, Quebec's keeping things steady, and there's a reason for that. They want to ensure that every newcomer that enters into the province can integrate successfully, both economically and culturally. So let's think about an example where you're hosting a dinner party. You don't want to invite so many people that you run out of food or seats, right? So you basically count how many number of people you want to invite. And exactly Quebec strategy is kind of like that. They're inviting a manageable number to make sure everyone feels welcome and has the resources to succeed in this province. And second part, French language is non-negotiable. Means if you're planning to immigrate to Quebec, speaking French is not just a bonus, it's pretty much mandatory, right? So unless you know the language, you're no way that you can enter into the province. Quebec's government has been pretty clear on this, that French language is non-negotiable no matter what. But here's how they are enforcing that part of it. By prioritizing French speakers, where programs like the Quebec Skilled Worker Program favor applicants who already know French. You see a lot of African countries, the South American countries, they're highly on the French side of it, so those certainly get advantages. So you may think that, okay, I already know this language, I qualified, I have a certification, and I qualified in the exam, so sometimes you may not probably be practicing that a lot. So in such instances, once you arrive, you can enroll in a government-funded classes to polish your language skills more on the French side of it. And thirdly, they're also trying to do language integration in workplaces where employers are encouraged to operate in French and offer support to employees learning the language, right? So you're already trying to practice in a classroom setting. It's also important that you practice in the workplace scenarios. So let's try to make this a little personal. Imagine moving to a new city where everyone speaks a different language. I'm sure you might have been through this scenario sometime at one point in your life. Even grocery shopping or making friends becomes a challenge. So Quebec is exactly trying to avoid that by ensuring newcomers have the tools to communicate effectively from the start. And I've often heard this from a lot of people who have traveled to Quebec or Montreal, stating that, okay, the moment I land into the country or the province, I've seen all the hoardings and displays in French language. Even the people who probably serve on the barista, they don't want to speak in English, rather they would want you to speak in French, right? So like you will be kind of an odd man out there in case you don't communicate in the language that the other person is speaking. With that, now, is it a challenge for non-French speakers? It is, absolutely. But here's the interesting tip that you need to take into consideration. If you are considering Quebec as a location that you want to target to get into Canada, you have to start learning French now. Apps like Duolingo or even watching French movies can give you a bit of a head start to understand the language nuances before you enroll into a professional training program and get the certification, get your points on the language parameters, of course. So you qualified in terms of language and everything, so let's also understand the Quebec's labor market and how the jobs are in Quebec. And the market itself in Quebec is a very unique labor market. On one hand, there are massive shortages in industries like healthcare, technology, and construction. That is more or less the same across Canada. On the other hand, the French language requirement can make it harder to fill these roles, especially you could be a construction worker, you could speak only in English or probably any other language if you're coming from Ukraine or something. But imagine if you don't know French, then it's going to be a barrier to get the job while the job may be hanging up there. And for that problem, Quebec is handling this pretty smartly, and they have some programs called fast track pathways, where programs are designed to quickly bring in workers for high demand jobs. And secondly, they're trying to be a regionally focused province where the government is encouraging immigrants to settle in smaller towns and rural areas and not just in Montreal. At the moment you hear about Quebec, Montreal pops into your mind, right? So there may be other smaller towns around Quebec for sure. And thirdly, they're trying to involve the employers as well, where the employers can now actively recruit skilled workers through Quebec's ARIMA portal. For example, let's say you're a nurse. In Quebec, there's an urgent need for healthcare workers, but you'll also need to learn medical terms in French. Speaking language of French is different from understanding the real terminology that is used at work, right? And this might sound a little kind of frustrating, but the province offers language training tailored to specific professions. For employers, it's like finding the perfect puzzle piece, and it's not about just filling a vacancy, it's about finding someone who fits into the workplace and culture. And the language should not be a barrier in those scenarios, right? Now let's understand the why part of it and why Quebec's strategy stands out and as compared to the other provinces who are dealing with immigration in the similar lines, right? So here are the top 3 reasons that I would like to bring you. The first and foremost is autonomy, right? Quebec controls its immigration programs unlike other provinces that rely heavily on federal initiatives like Express Entry. And the second differentiator is the language focus. While other provinces might value bilingualism, Quebec makes French almost mandatory. Right? While New Brunswick is a bilingual province, but their priority is not always French only kind of thing, unlike Quebec. And the third one is integration over speed. And they wanted to control the speed of it because their focus is something that they want to. Quebec isn't in a rush to boost just the numbers, so let's get 100,000 or 200,000. They're not that kind of rush. The focus is on integrating whoever comes in to ensure that whoever comes in is successful and getting whatever they want and their intentions are meeting positively. It's like other provinces are running a sprint and Quebec is more on the marathon pace. So they're trying to slowly pace up themselves to ensure long-term success and not just on the short-term side of it. We talked about positive things and how they are different, but let's also see what kind of challenges that they face as a province. Because not all strategies are the perfect ones, right? So the first and foremost hit that they take is about labor shortages. Even with its immigration programs, Quebec is struggling to fill critical roles. Some say the French language requirement limits the talent pool, right? So of course I can't speak French and not everybody can. I may have the talent, but language is a barrier. I may not think of moving to Quebec at all. Population decline. With an aging population and low birth rates, Quebec risks fall behind other provinces in terms of economic growth. And that's an area of concern for a large set of provinces or for that matter across Canada. And third one, integration, they talk about it, but still it has its own hurdles. Even with free French courses, learning a new language obviously takes time, right? So you learn theoretically, you practice, get the command. Obviously it takes a little bit of time. Imagine being the new kid at school and being told you have to learn an entirely new way of doing things to fit in. That's what newcomers in Quebec experience, and it's not always easy. You may be thinking what this means for you. So what does all of this mean if you're thinking about immigrating to Quebec? If you speak French, congratulations, you're already ahead of the game. I know many of them have pivoted and taken a different course of action to probably learn a new language or increase IELTS course or whatever it is. But whoever had taken it over, let me learn French, I think you're on the right path. Where the programs like skilled worker program will mostly prioritize your application if you have the required set of experience and qualifications. And if you are learning French, don't be discouraged. Start now and take advantage of resources like online courses and professional training programs. And also, if you're already studying in Quebec, make avail of the free language programs. And this is mostly for the employers. So I think they should be proactive, use tools like ARIMA to find skilled workers who meet your needs and align with the Quebec's requirements. And I find Quebec's immigration strategy for 2025 is pretty bold, thoughtful, and unique in its own. It's about more than just numbers. Well, the numbers exist, but there's a very robust strategy behind. It's about preserving their culture, which is important, prioritizing their integration, which is even more important, and also meeting their economic needs. And if you're considering Quebec as an option compared to other provinces, you have to start preparing now. Learning the language, understand the programs, and embrace the province's unique identity. I've never traveled to that province, but one day I might want to because it's pretty close to me. It's about 800 kilometers from here. So what I hear so far is a pretty beautiful one. But of all this that you heard, what do you think about Quebec's approach? Is it forward thinking or does it need to evolve? Drop your thoughts in the comments and let's keep the conversation going. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell icon for more insights on immigration, careers, and life in Canada. And thank you for watching Great Tales.